You walk into your house and you hear the sound of water splashing. You investigate and you suddenly realize that the hot water hose to your wash machine has sheared off and is spraying hot water into your utility room. What do? You'll know this after you finish listening to this episode of the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. Well, hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 231. And I hope that teaser hooked you, because apparently that's the kind of feedback I've been getting, is that, between the intro and everything like that, people don't get hooked to see the rest of the video. I'm not seeing that on my, looking at my metrics and everything like that. The people who watch tend to watch, and the people who don't watch tend to drop out during the very first part of it, because the algorithm, probably based off the title, pointed them at something else. Like, I had a lot of people suddenly with that big and beautiful, and apparently, there's a lot of skeezers out there looking for BBW, and, clicked on and went, wait a minute, who's the white guy? And decided to get rid of the, stop watching. So, hey, that's all right. I'm on board with that. This show is about real estate. This show is about houses. This show is about current events and affecting your house and real estate around you. And things happen in your house that will affect your house and your well-being and your sanity and your pocketbook, right? Now, I do this show and it's a lot of fun. All right, and most of the time I just turn on the camera to look at the little dot and I start talking, and I just talk about whatever. So coming into this week and going, what the hell am I going to talk about? Well, the real estate gods in the internet has smiled on me, and we got a pretty good topic. We're going to cover 7 things about your house that you need to know the locations of. And it is weird because it happens a lot that people don't know where these things are. Now, this scenario that I just showed you back at the beginning did not happen to me personally, but happened to my next door neighbor, who I met for the first time late at night when she was banging on my front door, hysterical, because the hot water hose to her wash machine had sheared off and was spraying hot water into her utility room. And she had reached out and tried to grab that little valve behind it, and because of the way the valve was designed and how old it was frozen open. So she was running around trying to find somebody who could help her. Fortunately, she found me, because I know how to turn houses off, much like women. But we're going to cover that, because yesterday I'm sitting there and I see an article from a website that I like, and it popped up on Twitter, all right, called 7 Things You Need to Know About Your House. So we're going to go straight into that, all right? I'm doing something a little bit different today, okay? Because normally I'm running this program, and I can always tell it's starting to lag, all right? And then I would minimize it down, and we'd go through our numbers and everything like that, all right? And I'm doing this with PowerPoint in the background. Well, we're not going to do that just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to try to show a web page in the background. All right, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to move this over here on the fly while I'm recording, and then I'm going to move that up here so you can see their logo, because I want these guys to get full credit for this. And of course, if the owner of this thing decides to contact me going, hey, I'm going to copyright strike you, I'd love to have you on the show, dude, because I really like your website. Okay, anyway, so this is from a place called artofmanliness.com, all right? All right, this particular article was written by Jeremy Anderberg, and it was written many, many years ago, and it was updated in 2021, okay, and it just suddenly, all right, this guy really knows how to run a social media empire, and he is constantly, consistently coming back and forth and doing, he's got thousands of essays, blog posts, videos. And so he has like a running churn going on of his social media stuff where he's reaching back and pulling that old content out and putting it out there. right? And he's got stuff in there like how to tie a tie, how to cook a steak, how to change your oil. Everything that your dad should have taught you is sort of like the underlying theme. All right. But hey, this is the 21st century and stuff like that. A lot of young men out there. Well, mom divorced dad and dad's living in another state with a hotter model. And so mom wasn't there to teach him how to tie a full Windsor or a half Windsor or a Shelby, which is, if you ever see me in a tie, I'm wearing a Shelby because they're easy to tie, and I like the way they look. Right, they give you the knot size of a Windsor, right, but they're not as complicated to do. So maybe we'll do an episode on tying ties one of these days. But this particular article that came up with, okay, is, we're just going to go straight here. Now, I'm showing you a website. So what's going to be happening here is we're going to be seeing a whole bunch of like the ads and stuff like that for American Family Insurance. If you see an ad on here, it's not like they're paying me, so I'm not supporting them in any way. But this man in this article, 7 things every homeowner should know the location of. All right, let's start with this. This is a good article. Go to this website, artofmanliness.com, link in the show notes below. And while you're looking down there, you might as well like, share, and subscribe this, right? Because a lot of your people out there don't know this. A lot of homeowners don't know this. If you bought a house with Ray Dawson, I guarantee you I've told you this at least once. All right. That doesn't mean you listen to me. Okay. That's the theme for this week. All right. But I've pointed these things out to you because when we're going through your house, we're going to look at your electrical panel. Okay. For those who don't know what electrical panel is, they usually look like this. They're usually located outside of your house. Sometimes they're located inside your house. This is actually a sub panel. All right. And I can tell that just by looking at it. All right. So if you see one of these things in the house, this is not your main electrical panel. All right. You're looking at a sub panel. All right. But if the lights suddenly go off in a room, but the rest of the house has powers, you're going to go out to your electrical panel and you're going to flip the little breaker. Look for the one that's flipped. If you got the old bus fuse ones, call an electrician and get a brand new electrical panel because you need to at least be in the late 20th century. All right. But electrical panels, we need to point that out to you. Okay. And the other thing is if you're doing any kind of wiring, right, you want to be able to turn the power off to your house, to that circuit before you start playing around with that light socket. All right. I'm not saying changing a light bulb. I'm talking if you're like sitting there and like you decide, let's install a ceiling fan. You watch a YouTube video and I can do that. You're going to want to go out to that breaker and turn off the power to that. All right. Because, 120 volts and at 60 hertz, it makes your teeth tingle. All right. So electrical panels. All right. If you're in an apartment, these things are usually located in your closet and you'll have a separate one inside your apartment somewhere. Same thing on that. All right. Other thing, water shutoffs. Now, the lady in question, my next door neighbor who came across, she did not realize that we needed, that she had a water shutoff outside of the house. Every one of your sinks should have one of these down there. This particular kind right there is sort of what I was talking about. These things will eventually in Arizona calcify and freeze up. Okay, so at some point you're going to want to have a plumber come in there or a really good handyman who knows how to sweat copper, all right, to swap all those things out with what's called a ball cock. All right, and I'll show you one of those things later. And get your head out of the gutter, people. All right, but your toilet has one of these things. Toilets leaking are huge. About outside of the little water line to your refrigerator, your toilet ones going are like the second most common thing I've ever heard of sudden house flooding. Right. And if that happens over the weekend, you're going to have a bad time. All right. All right. I also got these things. This right here. All right. This is actually called a saddle. All right. And it's a really cheap way to get a copper line. And when I was talking about the refrigerators, this is where you see these things. All right. Very small line. It's actually designed where it punches right through the copper on the outside. You screw it on. That little thing right there, all right, is your valve. All right. This one right here is actually saying is for a humidifier built into a home HVAC system, which I guess you could put extra humidity in your house. I live in the desert for a reason. I'm not a fan of humidity, but you'll see that. Here's another one. Okay. Here's one for an ice maker. Okay. Now I would probably argue, this is just a me thing, that particular one that they put in there, looking at the different type of metal and then brass, they're going to have a bad time because you can't mix different kinds of metals when you're doing this, because you'll start getting that funky little stuff growing on there. And just, it's bad. That's probably a zinc pipe, copper into zinc into brass. Bad idea. You get electrolysis stuff going on, and so that is somebody who did not know how to do it properly. That particular valve is not the one I would be using for that situation. And I am not a plumber, but I know things because I listen to home inspectors and plumbers when they call this stuff out. All right. So that was shut off for an ice maker and a refrigerator water dispenser underneath the kitchen, okay, in a basement utility closet, okay? Most houses in Arizona don't have basements, so most houses in Arizona, you're not going to be able to go down into the basement. And let's say grandma wants to have water to her refrigerator on the other side of the room from the kitchen, so Uncle Ron just gets in there with a garden hose and cuts that thing in. True story, saw that happen. That's why you'll occasionally hear me the term rat-cliffed. Oh, somebody rat-cliffed the problem, all right? Great guy, very handy. So far outside the box, he wasn't even in the room the box was kept at on some of his fixes, all right? But that's a common thing right there. Anyways, so now we know this. Here's the big one that I wanted to point out to you. The outside water. Yep. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about ball cock. That is actually, there is a ball in there with a hole drilled through the middle that lets the water through. It pivots in there like a bearing. You grab the handle. If the handle is going on line with the pipe, it's on. If it's going against the pipe, it's stopped. Okay? That is what you want to see in there. And you can tell by the coloration of the pipe. Somebody added that in there. They also put in, okay, this is a home inspector. This is probably right after a home inspection. I'm going to tell you why. This little suction arrest thing here, all right, they cost about $11 now. They're made out of brass. You screw them onto the end of your garden hose faucet, all right, because the potential for water backwashing in to your drinking line from the garden hose is considered bad by people who weren't Generation X, all right? So they invented these things to keep the millennials and the Zoomers safe, right? And what that thing installed right there is there to keep that from backing up. This little bell thing you see down here, all right, that is a water pressure gauge. It's got a high tension spring in there. Your water pressure coming into your line. This is something we've just seen in like the last 10 years of home inspections. Your municipal water is at a certain PSI, pounds per square inch, right? And it fluctuates during the day. The old joke about the Super Bowl and everybody goes during halftime and then, water pressure goes down. All right, that's what we're talking about. Nobody's using water, but they let a big surge into the reservoir. All right, water pressure can go up. At a certain point, higher water pressure in your pipes can damage your pipes. Basically, what it's going to do is it's going to identify the weak pipe that you should have replaced a while ago, like somebody who decided to use zinc into copper into brass. And as that starts ratting out, then all of a sudden you get that slug of high pressure water in there. And next thing you know, you got water spraying out and you're having a bad day. Remember, we're trying to keep people from having bad days. So this particular thing in there can be set by your plumber, okay, by turning a little nut right here and it adjusts the tension on that spring. So if the water ever exceeds, say, 100 pounds per square inch, it will start shooting out of that bell, protecting your house. That's the purpose of that. All right. They cost a couple $100 and a little bit more to have your plumber put into it. I don't have one on my house because when I bought my house, that wasn't the big thing for home inspections, right? I did have that put in, and I think I got those. I don't know. I'm Generation X, I drink out of the hose, and I don't even wait for the water to cool off first. All right. So, but that's that assembly right there. But what you want to need to know is the big red handle. When you have that leak, you can't stop because something is frozen or you don't know where the water is coming from. Okay, that's the handle you're going to hit. You're going to run outside and you're going to turn the water off. Okay, They ever have a problem with water in your city and stuff like that, and they say, hey, don't boil your water, don't use your water or anything like that, you might as well go out and turn that thing off, because you don't want whatever little critters got into the water system getting into your house. All right. So going along these lines, last picture that they have here, if you got these in your house right here, that is same thing. That's a screw system. Those are going to wind up seizing up over time. It's going to happen. More likely to have those things seize up and not be able to turn any more than it is for the high water pressure to blow your pipes, right? So if you get those things, save up a little bit of money, call your local plumber, have them come out there and just swap them out. All right, gas meters and shutoffs, especially for you people in earthquake territory. All right, now gas. Strangely enough, gas hot water heaters are not as dangerous as electrical hot water heaters, because gas meters tend to fail safe and off, and gas hot water heaters also don't randomly overheat and burst into flame like electrical hot water heaters do. All right, but that little red knob right there, that is the cutoff line to the to your gas hot water heater. A couple things on here. That is a cast iron pipe. Most of the time in gas lines, there will be cast iron coming off of that. All right. Same thing into brass. All right. So you might get corrosion, but because you don't have as liquids and waters coming in there, electrolysis does not happen as fast. But you are going to want to keep an eye on that stuff over time. All right. Same thing. They make these things with a longer end and a shorter end, so you can tell it is turned with the flow of the gas, with the length of the pipe. That means that one is on. If it's going this way, all right, that means it's going to be off. Got it, guys? All right. And then your meter on the outside. Now, you can turn it off to the entire house, and the city will do this for you free. All you have to do is stop paying your gas bill. This right here is your shutoff valve, okay? You notice, same thing. The little handle is going with the length of the pipe, okay? And if you were to turn that, you'd see that this hole would line up with that hole, and then the city can come in and put a deadbolt through there, all right? Because they don't want you turning on the gas on your own, all right? They want to make sure that everything's turned off in the house before they turn the gas back on, because sometimes people take the stove. When they take the stove, they don't turn the gas off to the stove, all right? But they turn the gas off to the house. Which is why if your gas is turned off, the city will not just come by and turn your gas on. You have to be there, because they want to come in and make sure all the gas lines are secured first before they start flooding it with the gas. Then you get the big Hollywood explosions. All right. So earthquake territory, anything else that you might feel that you really need to turn the gas off, or if you're going to be sitting there working on, let's say, replacing the stove, and you find out that old knob out there is frozen up, okay, then your person's going to have to come out and just turn that off and then vent the existing gas out of the system. All right. So next thing that they have in here, attic access. I am amazed how many people don't realize that they have attic accesses. Okay, they're usually in a closet, all right, or in the garage. All right. Sometimes you don't actually have an attic access. My house does not have attic access from the inside. I have to go outside, climb up on the roof, all right, and go in through a little panel that was installed on the side that I've replaced twice, and I literally screw it in there, and then I unscrew it and take it out and do whatever in the attic I have to do. Right? But attics is not just for storing Christmas ornaments and stuff like that. During the home inspection, they're going to pop their head up in there. They're going to see how much insulation you have going on. If they're rewiring, let's say, putting canister lights in a room, they're going to want to have access to the attic. Some of these attic accesses that they're making nowadays, they by law have to put it in there, but it's about this big. I mean, I couldn't get my head and shoulders up on some of these things, right? But, you know, look for it, figure out where it is. Sometimes you pop your head up in there and you realize a previous owner has stored things in there and they didn't take it with them, and you find attic gifties. And last time I saw was a bed frame, which I thought was really ironic because the owner did not, who had lived in that house for 10 years, and she had stairs. She had a stairs or a ladder going up, built in to go up into the attic. She'd never popped her head up there. Like, hey, you know how you have a bed up here? So And of course, when I said that, first thing she thought she had like some sort of transient living in her attic. Like, nobody lives in an attic in Arizona. Not for long. All right. Other ones, sewer access. Okay, this is when they're going to do clean outs. Now, this is obviously inside the house, probably in the basement. Oh, look, it says right there. Clean out on the floor of a basement storage area. This particular design, if you see a PVC pipe with a square cap on, with a square lug on it, that's going to be your clean out. You usually find these things in the backyard, and if you want to know whether or not your sewer line is in the front or in the back, all right, look for that in the ground. If you're going through a house and you can't find that, you're going to want to find that out sooner or later, because when they start having to replace things, when they start having to clean out your sewer line, when they start having to scope your line, that's going to be something that's going to be really, really important to get to. All right. They also do, they also run in there when the Roto-Rooter comes out, they're going to want to run down through that. Like I said, mostly in the backyard. Don't cover them up with plants. Don't cover them up with sod. Make sure that they're available, right? It'll save yourself a lot of hate and discontent. Same thing, if you ever have any problem, I'm over at your house and you say, hey, Ray, can you help me find the whatever? Yeah, I'll be happy to pour through your closet and find where your attic is. All right, what else do we got going on? Another one you might find, all right, you might find these things in apartments and stuff like that, all right, is you're going to have them inside, okay, and I'm just reading this article, and I probably should have done a little bit more homework, all right, but if you don't have one, especially in the apartments, well, if it's not yours, don't worry about it, all right. But, condos and stuff like that, you should have your own access, especially in the newer build stuff. All right. Hot water temperature gauge. So, house I currently sold. The Binzer that we got from the buyer wanted the hot water heater replaced because there was no hot water in the house, especially to the back bedroom. Master bathroom. And I asked the seller about that, and she goes, oh yeah, it starts running, but it's always been lukewarm. It's never been really, really hot or anything like that. And I went out and took a look at it, and I realized this was an electrical one. Now, this one set up right here is gas. In fact, it looks like the same picture. I wonder if he took this picture of his own house. Probably did. Okay, so, because that's definitely the gas shut off from earlier. All right, so I go and I check her, her hot water heater, and it's electric, so you do not have this assembly out there, right? The assembly on electric is actually behind a panel at the top of the hot water heater. I pull out my handy dandy little Leatherman, and I wonder if that's where I lost my Leatherman at. That would suck. Anyways, so I pop off that panel, and I look in there, and I realize that her temperature on her hot water heater was set to just above vacation. All right, vacation on these gas ones is to sit there and specifically make the hot water heater not heat hot water while you're on vacation. And then you come home and you crank it up to whatever you need to set it to, all right, and you're good to go in a couple hours, right? But she had it set to the lowest possible setting, and I walk back into the house and I look at her and I go, "Hey, did you forget to turn your hot water heater back up?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, just so you know, if you'd been married to me for the last 10 years, you would have had hot showers every morning because you just have to turn a little thermostat up to get hot water out, right?" So today, people don't know that these things exist. Now, this one right here, it's the red knob. Okay, same thing. If you have any questions, you can even just send me a picture of the front of your hot water heater. I'll tell you what kind of hot water heater you have. All right, but you can crank that up. Now, I really strongly discourage you from over cranking it. Like, oh, if the water's hottest, the hottest the water it is means I won't be using as much hot water, and when I mix it with my cold water, and sometimes I just want to broil something. It says right here, don't keep it over 120 degrees. That should be like the maximum. These older ones don't actually have temperatures. They just have low, medium, high. Okay, so you can sort of test it yourself. Set it to medium. All right, wait a little while. Run some hot water in your kitchen sink. Put your meat thermometer in there. See what it registers at. right? Anything over 120, you can start hurting yourself, and you can hurt kids. All right. So over 120 will scald you. All right, especially direct on skin. For some reason, 120 degrees outside in Arizona, everybody's okay with. But 120 degree water, you start having really serious issues. Now, men, I don't know what it is about the female of the species, but they can handle much, much hot water than we can. Right? Maybe it has something to do with their fiery temperaments or whatever. Right? But even if your wife wants you to crank it up to 140, just tell her it was 140. And, it's like, no, it's 140 when it's really 120, Trust me, we've been lying to women about measurements for centuries here, right? They're used to it. All right, but definitely, yeah, all right. Same thing. Turn it, hot water. Turn it down to vacation. Don't forget it. Okay. And utilize it. Next thing here, and this one's a little more fun, property lines. Okay. Along these lines, it's like, hey, where's the fence? Whose fence is it? All right. Do they have, is there a tree there that's hanging over into your part of the house? That kind of stuff, right? Setbacks, if you're planning like a really big major improvement, like you want to put a deck on, you got a really good example here. All right. What's your rear yard setback? These are all set by your city. All right. And for zoning issues, and just knowing where the boundaries are. Now here in town, okay, usually there's walls, there's fences, there's barbed wire and claymores, and minefields, clearly delineating my property from my neighbor's property, right? But it's good to know these things. You can find a lot of these by looking on the lot line, looking up your lot, your plat map online, your county recorder. If you're here in Maricopa, if you want to know where that is, it probably came across in your title report that you didn't read. All right. Have any questions? Send me a line and I'll help you find it. That, and I'll also learn where you live. So, and hey, here's this. Okay, that's the end of the article. All right, and like this. Reason why I love this site, how to wire an outlet, how GFCI outlets work as a home inspector will make it sound like it's a death trap if you don't have one. They're really easy to put in yourself. You don't need to hire a competent electrician or anything like that, even though that's what people really, really push. And yeah, love this site. I have been reading Art of Manliness for probably about 20 years now. Okay. A lot of my cooking recipes. What is going on with my hair today? Is it humid or something? All right. So I was going to get a haircut, but it just didn't work out today. Was running out of time, but wow. Okay. Just for the record, the guy who cut my hair last time around, I'm not super horrifically impressed with him. So it's just been sitting wrong. Oh my God, this is just getting worse. Hold on, I need to go to makeup. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Okay, so all right, sorry, that was just too distracting for me. So yeah, that is things you need to know about your house. And like I said, if I helped you buy your house, we've had this conversation. I guarantee we've had this conversation. But if you need a refresh or anything, let me know. I'll help you out on that. Hey, guess what? Let's talk numbers. All right? Because I've run 30 minutes into this thing. All right. These are numbers for July 9th, 2025. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 443 new listings. And that's it. All right. Okay, in reality, actives are 24,919. We were down 198 or 89 from the previous week. We broke under the 2,500 mark, right? Our new listings are also down to 1,578, down 305. Contracts are down 1,735, down 477. Closings last week were 1,067. This is what we call the summer doldrums, people. Our supply is down to 106.1. Okay. Our demand also fell a little bit to 76.4, but because supply fell faster than demand, our Cromford report number has actually ticked up 1/10% to 72.1. Looking at our various areas, and I wanted to point something out on this, that Cromford report was mentioning that we have seen house values start to drop, especially in the more outer and lower tier markets. And we'd see why. Buckeye, Maricopa, Queen Creek, Surprise, even Peoria's barely sort of holding on, okay, but especially Buckeye, Maricopa, and Queen Creek, we're actually starting to see house values drop out there. And you can understand why, because Buckeye is at 49.3, which means there are 2 houses for every buyer out there. Paradise Valley is still leading the pack, up 25%, all right, from this time last month. Why? Stock market. The stock market likes what's going on in the world today. Stocks are going through the roof, and people are offloading their stocks and buying mansions. Same with crypto, right? Crypto's doesn't work with the same way as the stock market is. Crypto ties into the strength of the dollar. So when you see big, beautiful bills get passed with very little spending cuts, despite what they tell you, the people who actually look at the numbers and don't just read the headlines realize, wow, they didn't really cut that much at all, and we're still sliding into a deficit, into debt, and into the abyss. And so I need to get my money out of my worthless daughters and put them into cryptocurrencies, where there's a limited amount of those things that will ever be created. So the crypto bros now get to dump their crypto holdings and buy Paradise Valley mansions, right? That's what's going on in Paradise Valley in a nutshell. The ones who don't want to spend that much in Paradise Valley move to Fountain Hills, okay? Although they have dropped, okay? They're still the other house neighborhood in a buyer's market. A seller's market. Because after those 2, it's buyers. Chandler, Avondale, Glendale. Okay, these are our balanced ones. Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale, and Cave Creek. Gilbert right there on the bubble, okay? 90 is a cutoff, right? So we're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say, Gilbert, you are still in a balanced market. Okay? Won't be next week. Since this thing was done July 3rd, and they don't drop this chart until later tonight, I bet you when I check later tonight that you're going to see Gilbert moving into a buyer's market. But Gilbert, Tempe, Goodyear, Peoria, Surprise, Queen Creek, Maricopa, and Buckeye, these are all where the buyers need to be. So I saw an article earlier this week talking about how the interest rates have dropped just a bit, and there was a sudden surge of applications for new loans. Hopefully that means that people are starting to come on board. I do know there are buyers out there, and I was talking to Linda earlier this week, and he says that all of his home purchase loans right now are to first-time home buyers. All right, so the first-time home buyers coming on the market. Like I said, it might be, like I said, it's, even though you see Maricopa and Buckeye in a falling state right now, okay, and we're not talking 10, 15, we're not talking crash state, okay, but we're seeing the house prices have solidified there, and now they're starting to come down a little bit price per square foot. You got the negotiation room where you can go in there and probably make an offer for less than what an appraiser would tell you the value of the property is. Get it accepted, get under contract, okay, get a whole bunch of concessions and everything. And like I said, if you're planning on moving somewhere in the next 5 years, you might not want to buy a house, right? Because it's going to be really hard to recoup your costs of purchasing that house, okay, with normal appreciation, which is historically 2.5%. Some people say 3, some people say 2.5. It all depends on how you want to do the math on that. But 2.5%. Right, it costs you about 10% of the sales price to sell a place. I can break it down for you. Some agents will tell you less, but they're only going to tell you what they're charging you. They're not going to cover all the other fees and everything else that is involved. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Pay no attention here. Joe, work with me. I work for cheaper. All right. Yeah, my honesty costs me money in real estate every month. All right. But the you know, right, so at 2.5% at the 5-year mark, you can now sell your house, all right, and get what you put into it out. All right. your 3, 4, 5, 20% down that you put in, you're going to be getting that full out. Year 6, now you're starting to get profitable, because remember, you always have to price in the cost of selling the place, right? That's why real estate is considered like a liquid-ish asset, right? And by liquid, it means, can I access the money quickly? The most liquid money you have is the money in your pocket. The least liquid money that you have is in your house or tied up into some account that you're not allowed to access. All right, liquidity is important for some people in some certain situations, right? So, you're always going to want to calculate in how much is going to cost me to unload this house. All right, so if you are looking at being like, hey, this is going to be the house that we're going to live in. All right, we're going to get ourselves a 3-2. We just got married. We're going to live here. We're going to raise kids there until they go to high school or about to go to high school. Or, hey, maybe you're going to be like my folks. Okay, they bought that house when I was 12, 13, somewhere around in there. All right, they're still there. They're still there. Hi, Dad. All right, so, some people are like that. And that's why my parents, because they're not constantly buying the new house. They don't buy a new house. They just build onto the old one. That house you couldn't even recognize that house with all the changes my mom has mandated needed to be done to that house. Okay, from the original floor plan. All right. So if you're that kind of person, that house is paid off. All right. I'm 54 years old. Okay, they've been in there for like 32 years. That house was paid off a while ago, especially with my mom deals with loans. All right. So if you're going that route, you're moving into Buckeye, right? You don't care you're in a falling market, right? Because it's going to come back out of it on the other side sooner or later, and you just got it at a decent price and hopefully a decent rate. And if the rate ever gets better, you refi, understanding that you're going to be refining into another 30-year loan, which is a pain in the butt, right? But so on and so on, rinse and repeat. So these are the things that, I see when I'm reading the news. Right? There's things I see reading the news that we had a 12-year-old drowned, right, here in Arizona night before, because somebody was not watching 12-year-olds around and pets around water. And the other thing is that they drowned in an inflatable pool. All right, so now I'm really interested in trying to figure out exactly what the hell was going on there. But, we are in the child drowning in pool season, all right? So watch your children, pets around water. We are also in the monsoon season. Do not drive in anything flooded, especially if you're in Texas. Dark joke, all right? But remember, we too have areas in here. Some of these washes will fill up very, very quickly. So you're out in the country and whatnot, and you're looking at the pretty lightning in the mountains uphill from you. You're not camping in the washes, boys and girls. Right? But you're going to be camping up on top of the hill, looking down into the wash, all right? Talking to your friends and family because you're working your circles on your camping trip, right? You're going to have an awesome, great weekend because wouldn't you rather be camping than here in the city? No, I'd be. I just got to work on weekends, right? And I want you guys to have a really great day. Thank you guys much. I'll talk to you later.